what do we know about the Trump rally gunman? Dr. Carol Lieberman is host of Dr. Carol's Couch, joining me now with a look at the psychological profile of Thomas Matthew Crooks. Dr. Lieberman, thanks for coming on tonight.
My pleasure.
So let's talk about it. I've read some of the postings online. He's a young guy. He was in a BlackRock commercial as a senior in high school. He was heavily bullied. I mean, I've read descriptions that say he was viciously bullied all the way through high school. But that still doesn't account for him taking all of the extraordinary measures he had to take, buying a gun illegally. He's underage, and carrying the gun. I think he bought a ladder as well. There's a lot that he did to get into a space where he could actually try to kill President Trump.
Yes. It is still somewhat of a mystery, but I have been trying to put all the pieces together. I mean, we don't have all the pieces. I've been trying to put the pieces together that we do have so far. What's so interesting is that in the bullying, his classmates would call him school shooter. And actually, when he was a freshman, he had actually threatened to shoot up the school. And so much of what we know about him fits the profile of a typical school shooter. So that is being a loner, being bullied, being generally there's abuse or neglect at home. And that's going to be the most interesting part. I certainly believe that there was one or the other. Actually, neglect is a kind of abuse. And being addicted to violent video games. Every single school shooter has had an obsession with violent video games, and we have information that various classmates saw him, always with his playing video games, violent video games. And what else? The real answer is going to come from his parents. I mean, the real setup. I mean, even when kids get bullied, they pick on the kids who are weaker, who have some kind of psychological flaw, and so which comes from home. That comes from typically the abuse or the neglect, but also what I think is particularly interesting in this case is that he tried to join the gun club in high school, and they rejected him. They rejected him because when he was trying out, he made a shot that was just so outrageous, like you couldn't shoot, bottom line. And also they said he made comments that made it seem dangerous that he would be around guns. So I think that he was trying to get revenge on his high school, on all the people who bullied him, on particularly the gun club, to show them, you think I'm not a good shot? Let me show you.
So, Dr. Carol, my gosh, so I'm over here. I've got my mom hat on. In fact, that never comes off. It's just kind of invisible, but I'm always thinking about these stories as a mom. And I want to just for 1 second, if we could veer off into the advice portion, because what you do is you give analysis and you take all of these stories on. But at the end of the day, you're a therapist. You are a doctor of this particular part of the human body, which is the mind. Let's say we have parents watching right now. And all of us as parents, we know our kids go through phases. They make mistakes. We don't, send a child to a mental institution for one comment or being bullied. But at the end of the day, we do have to have a plan in place for if our child is bullied, because most kids are bullied. Some of them, it's, very light bullying. It's in grammar school. It's easy to forget. Others are terrorized during their high school years. And I've seen some people who aren't doctors of psychology like yourself who've said, oh, you know what? All you got to do is put your kid in taekwondo or judo so that they can get some self-confidence about themselves, build up a little muscle mass so they don't look weak, and then kids will stop bullying them. And that has been proven to help. But I think you probably have a different perspective here. What should parents do if they find themselves in this position?
I think that that's fine to do. I'm not against it. However, you have to go deeper than that. And actually, even in elementary school, the younger the child is when they're bullied, the more the scar is for the rest of their life, the longer it lasts. Of course, it depends upon what the bullying consisted of and so on. But even in elementary school, and the particularly unfortunate part is, I've had families where their child was bullied, and I tell them to go in and talk to the teacher and talk to the principal and keep talking. The problem is that a lot of these schools don't want to hear about it. they don't really know what to do, or they don't want to be bothered with what to do, and they ignore the parents. So what I say is, first of all, to keep being the squeaky wheel, you have to keep, talking to everybody at school. You have to call the police if it's something violent, that rises to that kind of an occasion. And I don't mean necessarily shooting a kid. I mean, like beating a child up, for example. I mean, we've seen some examples in the news recently of kids really terrible. I mean, a girl who was beaten up and she had a head injury, and she's, damaged for life. So that's one thing. The other thing is to recognize that kids who are bullied, the other kids are seeing some kind of psychological weakness, and to look at yourself and see what's happening in your family. Is there something that could be upsetting my child? And yes, take them to a therapist to get an evaluation at least. Are they depressed? Are they in their room a lot? Are they losing friends? Do they not seem to have many friends? I mean, this guy, for example, all the other kids in the class say that he didn't really have friends, or he had a small group, that were kind of loosely connected. So certainly look for drugs if they're, older, and look for other signs that they are not doing well, that they are psychologically not doing well, and look to fix that, not just to go to the school, but also to actually try to try to see what the other kids are seeing. I mean, like with Thomas Crooks, for example, the other kids spotted it. They kept calling him school shooter. Now, granted, he did make a threat to the school, but I mean, they saw it, that he would be the most likely to become a school shooter. So really, kids and teachers do see these things. They need to tell the parents, and the parents need to take action, take them to a therapist.
Yeah, so I agree with you. I think the issue is that we as parents, I'll take the parent position here. Parents are like, "Oh my gosh, my kid's getting bullied." And they see their child as, the baby they had. We all freeze our kids at some age. It's 2 and under. We freeze them there in our minds, and every time we look at them, we see that cute bouncing baby. But in reality, they go through awkward phases. And during those awkward phases, they need extra help and care and attention. And sometimes they need to change schools. Sometimes they need to be removed from that environment and given an opportunity to start again, because the
Yeah,
place where they were is actually poisoned for them. It has become toxic, and it can't be rehabilitated.
right.
Parents need to know that. And I think your advice about taking them to a therapist, the therapist can say gently, in ways that parents can't, that a child needs to toughen up or be kind, or teach them strategies for making small talk and talking, and capitalizing on what their strong suit might be, because they might be thin in stature or smaller than their age group, but they could also be very artistic, or they could be very
Right.
snappy and intelligent, something like that. Dr. Carol Lieberman, MD, MPH, host of Dr. Carol's Couch. Tell everybody how to listen to you more often.
Well, they could go to my website, terroristtherapist.com, and my podcast, The Terrorist Therapist Show, is on there, also on other stations, Renegade Talk Radio, and so on. And a book that is going to be ever more useful, unfortunately, is Lions and Tigers and Terrorists, Oh My, How to Protect Your Child in a Time of Terror.
Oh, wow. Okay, we'll be looking for that. Thank you so much, Dr. Carol, and have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you. You too.
All right. Up next, we have our post-Republican National Committee wrap-up right after this.